As we turn the pages of history in the early part of the 20th century, the world was undergoing unparalleled changes. It was a time of technology and innovation, and a time when individuals with an understanding of these new technologies could help shape the world we now live in. Leighton A. Wilkie was one of those individuals. Through his wisdom and vision, Leighton Wilkie accomplished things that will be recorded forever in history. His inventions have helped improve man's material welfare, and his generous contributions to research and education furthered man's knowledge of the world around him. A devoted family man, Leighton always had time for his wife Adele and children Michael and Bonnie, no matter where his business took him. From humble beginnings in a Winona, Minnesota garage, Leighton built a multinational business organization with thousands of employees worldwide. His inventions, from the universal Wilkie alignment tool for repairing automobile engines to the Continental process for low-cost short-run stampings, have benefited mankind in many ways. The metal-cutting bandsaw that he invented in 1933 increased manufacturing capability and raised production rates in plants throughout the world, and is recognized as one of the 7 basic machine tools invented by man. His belief in the need for a better understanding of the American free enterprise system led him to create a wide array of educational charts and traveling exhibits on economics and productivity, and a full-length textbook titled The Principles of American Prosperity. For his efforts in economic education, Leighton Wilkie was awarded the Freedom Foundation Award 11 times during his lifetime. His search for knowledge, however, went far beyond the areas of economics. As a student of history and anthropology, he sponsored research into the very origins of man himself. Leighton provided funds and sponsored expeditions by Louis Leakey, Raymond Dart, Jane Goodall, and many others. Not content to let others do all the work, Leighton traveled the world over to personally explore the origins of man and gain insight into how he used tools to create a better way of life. Leighton also sponsored numerous educational exhibits in museums, built the Economic Tree of Life display for the World's Fair, and established the Julius C. Wilkie Steamboat Museum in his hometown of Winona, Minnesota. And when it burned to the ground in the 1980s, Leighton provided funds to build a larger, more attractive one. His huge Civilization Through Tools exhibit at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago is the only permanent exhibit of its kind in the world and is visited by over 2 million people annually. His work and dedication to mankind eventually led to his receiving a doctorate degree from St. Mary's College. Throughout his life, he has done a wide variety of things, from operating Willowbrook Farm, a working dairy farm in Long Grove, Illinois, to serving as an advisor to President John F. Kennedy in Washington. Leighton's love of the outdoors was legendary, whether it was when he took a simple walk with a family pet or when he established the Thunderbird Recreation Area and Game Preserve in Genoa City, Wisconsin, where he raised many endangered wildlife species and helped bring them back from the brink of extinction. He had a fondness for horses that began during the polo playing days of his youth and continued throughout his life. He was a member of the Rancheros Visitores and rode with them regularly on their annual trek. He had a love for water and boating that began at an early age. By the time Leighton reached his later years, he had piloted almost every type of watercraft imaginable. He was also at home in the air, whether barnstorming with Max Conrad in the Roaring Twenties or soaring through the skies in a glider 50 years later. Leighton was an avid fisherman in streams, lakes, and oceans around the world, and a hunter whose skills with a gun won him national acclaim and recognition. He was also a pioneer in cinematography and recognized the value of recording visual documentation of events. Yes, Leighton Wilkie was a man of many talents, a visionary who saw what could be, a man who recognized opportunity and a person with the wisdom and strength to follow through with his dreams. Of all his accomplishments and deeds, however, Leighton Wilkie will be remembered most of all as a loving husband, a caring father, and a devoted family man. To truly understand this remarkable man and comprehend how he was able to accomplish so much for so many during his lifetime, you have to appreciate life as he saw it.
I was born in Winona, Minnesota, a river town. I was born in 1900, so I saw the entire development of the sweep of progress, that part of the Industrial Revolution. And it was good to view it from a little town like Winona. It was a lumber town, so there was lots of activity. The railroads coming in after the steamboats, the development of the electric lights and the telephone. I saw the development of the automobile from a one-cylinder brush car that we had all the way through to the present-day development.
Born at the turn of the century to Julius and Nellie Wilkie, Leighton was the oldest of 5 children, including his brothers Don, Jim, Bob, and his sister, Gretchen. Leighton's early experiences in Winona were to mark his life as an innovator. In seeing how the world was changing, he knew he would and could contribute to the process. Leighton began his professional life at age 17 as a dealer of Grant cars. By the end of his first year, he had sold 22 Grant automobiles, more than anyone else in the state of Minnesota. As top salesman, he was presented a cash prize and a briefcase at a sales meeting held in Minneapolis.
I just feel like I've been in business all my life. I sold automobiles when I was very young and did quite well at it. And then in the garage, we had developed a tool that was used to align connecting rods. Every engine has a connecting rod between the crankshaft and the piston. So this tool, which was a precision gauge, made it possible to realign the connecting rod.
Always the innovator, Leighton saw a bright future opening for better tools. The first device to align connecting rods of motor car engines had been made by his father for the convenience of his own garage. Leighton seized on its larger potential and doubled the tool's utility by adding a faceplate which enabled it to align pistons as well.
This was in 1919, and in that year I sold 11,000 of these gauging tools. The method I used was selling direct from the factory, from where we made them to where they were used to the customer. I got the idea from a very large company, the largest company in my hometown, called the J.R. Watkins Company, and they sold house to house, and that method of direct selling seemed to me the only way to sell. That's the system we use today. We take our product in an unbroken chain of control to the customer, demonstrate it, and sell it.
In 1929, Leighton invented a system of making low-cost, short-run stampings that became known as the Continental process.
Well, it was in 1926 that I moved the machine shop portion of the garage to Minneapolis and set up what I call Continental Machine Specialties Incorporated. And it first engaged in making dies, stamping dies for metal pressings. And that was a job shop business. Mm-hmm. And I developed a method of making stampings without the usual die, instead of an expensive die mounted in a punch press. I made a very simple one that was not mounted in the punch press, but instead was shuttled in and out of the punch press between plates with an elaborate shuttle mechanism.
Not only was Leighton Wilkie an innovator in the machine shop industry, he was a pioneer in the field of marketing as well.
16mm movies had just come out recently. Bell and Howell had a wonderful camera that everybody wanted to own. And so we knew a little about making home movies. So we took a movie of this whole process, how you make this simple die, how you shuttle it in and out. We would furnish the shuttle system, the shuttle mechanism parts, to anyone who would take a license to use my patent under that system. Well, that would be a very difficult thing to sell by hauling around the equipment and demonstrating it. So instead we brought around a Bell and Howell projector and 2 reels that told the whole secret. And that's the approach we took. We said, we'll give you a license to use this system. If you pay us the fee in advance, we'll show you the movie.
In 1933, Leighton had an even better idea. While cutting letters to make a sign for his shop, he conceived the idea of a machine that could do the same work in metal that a wood bandsaw could do in wood. Further work led to the invention of the metal-cutting contour bandsaw. So important was this new machine to manufacturing that Leighton Wilkie was credited with inventing one of the 7 basic machine tools invented by man, joining such outstanding men as John Wilkinson and others. Because the first machine had the dual function of band filing and polishing in addition to sawing, it was originally called a DoALL machine. This was later changed to DoALL. The ensuing decades were ones of growth for Leighton. In the 1940s, the DoALL headquarters were moved to new facilities in Des Plaines, Illinois. Manufacturing plants were opened and the sales and distribution network was expanded. Today, the DoALL organization encompasses over 80 companies worldwide. In later years, Leighton's son Michael assumed a leadership role in the business, taking the DoALL Corporation to new heights.
Well, it's been a steady growth, very steady up growth. Most radical changes is after I stepped down from the leadership and my son Michael took over, and then it zoomed up this way. I was very lucky. Mike studied every phase of the business. And he went out selling. He had a territory. He worked in the shop. He learned the business because he knew that this was the business he was going to be in. He studied in school, specialized in finance. That was his major. And he's gradually taken over. Does a fabulous job. Organize, deputize, and supervise. My feeling is that you can always find people smarter than you are to do a job. If you pick the right people and you give them full authority to run it, and then let them run it without interference.
Not only was Leighton Wilkie an innovator in his professional endeavors, his love for man and his tools carried over into his personal love for automobiles.
My father had a garage, so gave me an opportunity to work on cars. And I remember I had a Saxon, which was a make-up car, about 1915, and it was a compact or a miniature small car. And I customized it, made it very special into a racing car. I did a lot of customizing. In fact, I've customized nearly every car that I've ever owned.
Inventor, entrepreneur, industrialist. Leighton Wilkie was all of these. But to stop there would be to tell only part of his amazing story.
My business is my first love, of course. But I have an avocation of anthropology, of all things. anthropology covering the whole span of the evolution of man from the time that our pre-ancestors, our first ancestors, stood upright, used these hands to grasp a thing, a tool. With the opposed thumb and the grip, they could grasp something. And that act changed that being from a lower form of animal into a man. That's the difference between all other animals and man, is that we are tool-using beings. We added a fourth dimension to our thinking. All other animals have a three-dimensional existence. We have a fourth, that thing is a fourth dimension, which is now extended to the moon. And so anthropology is a pretty important subject for toolmakers.
Leighton Wilkie was a lifelong student of the evolution of man and his tools, with his great interest in educational, scientific, and charitable causes. Leighton spearheaded the creation of the Wilkie Brothers Foundation in 1953. As director, Leighton launched a series of comprehensive educational programs and exhibits in a continuous stream to explain the economic story of man's dependence upon tools. Over the years, the Wilkie Brothers Foundation also financed the work of many researchers in the area of human evolution, including Louis Leakey, Jane Goodall, Raymond Dart, Robert Ardrey, Diane Fossey, Donald Johanson, Nicholas Toth, and Berute Galdikas. I remain deeply indebted to the Wilkie Brothers Foundation, not only for their initial support, but for the generosity in financing a renewal of the research after its first phase was terminated by a rebellion, and for their continued financial assistance toward data compilation in America. Diane Fossey. It was Leighton A. Wilkie, with his Wilkie Brothers Foundation of Des Plaines, Illinois, who rode to my rescue in a comparably critical hour. Just where we should all be without him, I cannot say. Robert Ardrey. I shall always be immensely grateful to Mr. Leighton Wilkie, who, trusting Lewis's judgment, gave me the chance to prove myself. Jane Goodall. Your groundwork did more to condition the atmosphere than any of us can appreciate. Raymond Dart. While Leighton Wilkie's life was experienced to the full, it would have been incomplete without his wife of 56 years, Adele, and their two children, Michael and Bonnie.
My wife was from Albuquerque, New Mexico. She was going to the University of Arizona. I was making a barnstorming trip with my friend Max Conrad. We landed in Tucson, and that's where I met Miss Wilkie.
One of the reasons the Wilkies' marriage lasted so long is that there was always a sense of their separate yet complementary interests. Each supported the other's responsibilities and interests. Although some of their interests were vastly different, the Wilkies shared a love of travel. Both of them dived headlong into research for their trips, spending months learning about the places they would see. Adele loved to explore and experience the wonder of a new place, while Leighton was always looking for what was beyond the next valley, ever anxious for the next phase of the trip to begin. A devoted family man, Leighton often took time away from the demands of business to spend with his family.
The best part of growing up in our house was being treated like an adult. For as far back as I can remember, Bonnie and I were allowed to do things and have experiences that I guess most kids don't have a chance to do. One example was a family trip around the world when I was 9 years old. In Africa, I was even issued a big game hunting license. Mom and Dad gave us a lot of opportunities to grow up in a very special way.
My father's enthusiasm for life is my most pervasive memory. Every new project, every new trip, Any idea of mine or Mother's or Mike's was warmly embraced and eagerly supported. I think what impresses me most about my father is his ability to enjoy life to the fullest.
In an effort to share the joy of family with friends, relatives, and business associates, the Wilkies began distributing unique greeting cards each holiday season. In many ways, these cards tell the story of Leighton Wilkie's life in the most personal manner possible. Leighton A. Wilkie was a man of many dimensions. During his lifetime, his efforts influenced the lives of millions. Yet for all his accomplishments, Leighton Wilkie possessed a sense of vision that reached out to the present day and beyond. The following interview was recorded in 1979. Yet his comments on society, education, and economics paint a picture that is still accurate today.
What's going to happen is that the world is going to industrialize. They've found out in Singapore that to raise their standard of living, they've got to make things, make them better and cheaper than anybody else. They found out that in Brazil. They found it out all around the world, in the so-called underdeveloped countries. But along with that, they have to understand that in order to produce at the maximum rate, they have to have individual freedom. If not completely at first, at least start with it. I'm an optimist. I think the world has all of its future ahead of us. It's a wonderful world. And if people, in general, understand technology, we can survive anything. Because with technology, we can do most anything.